Would like to welcome everybody back to another Saturday Short. And today we're going to continue with where we left off last week with myth busting. All right, first one that we are going to address is the fact that when Carl Pusser retired as chief of police in Adamsville, that Buford took his place. Now, a lot of stories are told about that, but this one is false. Actually, there were two chiefs in between the time that Carl Pusser left office and when Buford took over as chief. Those two individuals were Hoyt Brown and Buford Surratt. So there we have yet another myth, something that is constantly repeated by those Buford Pusser experts. All right, moving on. Another myth that it seems to be out there is that the state liners had a lot of politicians in their pocket. Now, that's what the movie showed. Everybody believed it. Hogwash. About the only politicians that the state liners had in their pockets were the sheriffs. For instance, James Dickey was in the state line people's pockets, as was Buford Pusser. Now, something I might point out was that James Dickey was about to be indicted by the assistant U.S. attorney office in Mississippi for his collusion with the state liners and moonshiners. Seems kind of odd, doesn't it? After we were told in the movies that it was uh, the state liners that had everybody in their pockets. Well, it seems like that Buford, when he was sheriff, had the politicians in his pockets. I mean, think about this now. Whenever he would start having problems, all he had to do was cry that, hey, I'm a Republican and they're all Democrats. That's what he did when the ABC, the Alcohol Beverage Commission, cut him out of doing raids in McNairy County because apparently they suspected that Buford was informing the different people that were going to be raided that it was going to happen because they had difficulty catching anybody. When they cut him out, things changed. So there is that. Then, he had Ray Blanton. He and Pay Me Ray were both from Adamsville, a town of only 1,000 people. Now, Ray Blanton was going to make Buford his head of the Department of Public Safety, which is over the TBI and the Highway Patrol. But of course, Buford got killed in a car wreck first, so that never took place. So it seems like that the one who had the politicians in their pocket uh, were the sheriffs of McNairy County, and so on. Now, the movie would also have you believe that it was a sheriff in McNairy County that tried to kill candidate Buford Pusser prior to the 1964 election. It's totally untrue. James Dickey was the one that got killed, and a lot of people suspect that Buford may have had his hand in that. Others suggest it was the state liners who had their hand in it because they were afraid that he might roll over on them as he was about to be indicted. So, both men had good reasons. So there is that. The movie Walking Tall would also lead you to believe that Buford barely beat a dead sheriff in the sheriff's race in 1964. That's not true. The dead sheriff only got 307 votes. The real race was between George Weatherford, an independent candidate, and Buford Pusser. And there was only about 300 votes that separated those two men, with Buford just barely winning. So that's more bunk. Now, move on. Buford ran on a platform that he was going to close the state line down, that he was going to take care of things, and that was going to be the end of the state line. But yet, In December of 1964, that's about the only time that I know of when that there was ever much of a raid down at the state line. And even that was kind of controlled by somebody else. Rex Armistead, who was a investigator from Mississippi, has told the story that Buford was invited to a intelligence meeting at the Jackson office of the TBI, and when he got up there, he found out that it wasn't an intelligence meeting. It was actually, where they were planning to raid the state line, both the officials in Tennessee and Mississippi, in a multi-jurisdictional raid where Alcorn County, McNairy County, the Tennessee Highway Patrol, the Mississippi Highway Patrol were all going to join forces and raid the state line. What happened there was that they actually, after they told what this event was going to be, they kept somebody right at Buford's elbow so he couldn't pick up a phone and call Louise and tell her that, hey, you're about to get raided. So it was a total surprise to them. So that is about the only time that there was ever a successful raid at the state line, at least on the Tennessee side. Be sure and subscribe and hit that bell so that you'll get notifications of new videos when they're released. Now, moving on from there, there are all kinds of unsubstantiated claims that just never made sense. And so I got to looking into those. For instance, there are the claims that, his first year in office, Buford shut down 88 moonshine stills. Now, that's what the Pusser Museum had, or maybe still has, on their pamphlet that they pass out to visitors there. The curator of the museum was recently on an episode of Moonshiners, and she claimed that number was 169. Now, here is a photo of the newspaper, McNairy County Independent Appeal, the end of Buford's first full year, where that they announced that Buford had successfully shut down 28 stills, a long way from either 88 or 169, and that's a number that Buford didn't argue with. Another one is that, let's take, for instance, the 1966 shooting of Louise Hathcock. It's first day of February. Buford claimed that he was forced to kill her and that she had pulled a gun, fired at him, and he pulled out his 41 Magnum, shot her dead. Well, it wasn't anything like it showed in the movie, because her autopsy report shows that she was shot twice in the back, which Buford claimed were his first two shots, and then shot in the head while she lay on the floor. And two people who were there at the Shamrock that morning, in a room right behind the registration desk and just outside Louise's living quarters, claimed that they heard Buford's gun fire first. Now, there's a big difference between hearing a 41 Magnum and a 38. I fired both, and they make a lot different noise. And so the theory was that Buford, after killing Louise, went over, picked up her handgun, maybe took it off of her. We don't know, because no one saw the shooting. And he fired a round through the window and into an awning post outside. Shows that she was shot twice in the back, which Buford claimed were his first two shots, and then shot in the head while she lay on the floor. Now, that's kind of suspicious, don't you think? Especially when you consider that his own chief deputy, Jim Moffett, quit for a little while right after that. When he arrived home that night, he told his wife and his oldest son, who was on leave from the military, that if anything ever happens to me, you don't need to look any further than Buford Pusser. So it makes you wonder what Jim saw or heard that we don't know about. Then there are those claims that are amazing to me. They really played it up big that Buford was shot 8 times, stabbed 7 times. Okay, now consider this. The first time he was actually shot was in January of 1967 when he stopped a speeding vehicle. He claimed he was hit 4 times. That is four. And when you listen to what he had to say, he said that one shot grazed his arm, one shot grazed his abdomen, and then 2 bullets went through the exact same hole over here in his left cheek and didn't do any damage to his teeth, gums, tongue, or anything else. So there is that. But if you consider that only one shot may have gone through his cheek, that's only 3 times he was shot. Then at the ambush in August of 1967, he claimed that he was hit once, maybe twice in the chin. Now, I don't really believe that myself because the wound that you see isn't really representative of a wound where you get shot twice in the same spot. How lucky can a gunman get to always hit in the same spot? Kind of a mystery there. But the point is that if you consider actually 3 shots from the first shooting, 1 shot from the second, that's only 4 shots that he's been hit. And then if you add the one in from Russ Hamilton, where he grazed Buford's abdomen, didn't even have to go to the doctor for that one. Well, that's only 5. That's a long ways from being shot 8 times. I don't know. Then the stabbings are something similar. Oh, and you have to remember that there were never any witnesses around any of those shootings. Now, as far as the stabbings go, he would claim that he was stabbed 7 times. When you sort it out, when you hear that, your first impression is that there were 7 different times that he was in a fight where he was stabbed. No, there were only 2 incidents, and in one he claimed that he was stabbed 5 times in the chest, and in a second incident when he was trying to stop a vehicle that he thought was hauling moonshine, he claimed he got stabbed a couple of times in the arm. Ward Moore was there and actually witnessed that one and said that didn't happen. But there were no witnesses to that first stabbing where he was allegedly stabbed. Keep in mind that, he only spent one night in the hospital for observation when he got stabbed those 5 times. So a lot of people suspect that most of his gunshot wounds and his knife wounds were actually self-inflicted. Also, you might keep in mind that as a teenager, Buford would tell wild tales about going over to Savannah, nearby town, and getting into it with a bunch of boys and having his arms cut up. And no one seems to know anything about that. It strikes you as kind of odd that with Carl having been in law enforcement, that he doesn't seem to have ever remembered any of these accounts. He never mentioned them. Helen never mentioned them, but yet they're part of the folklore. Then he claimed he cleaned up the state line. I have challenged people to tell me the name of a place, an establishment at the state line that he closed down, anywhere there in the county that he closed down. Nobody seems to know of any, but yet he's credited with that. Can't find a single state liner that he sent to prison. Now, you would think if you're cleaning up the state line, somebody would remember that you either shut down some of the establishments there or that you sent some of the state liners to prison or both. But nope, not in this case. So there you have it, folks. A lot of incidents where You can look at the Pusser Legend, and it just seems to fall apart. And it's like I always say, speaking seriously, you have to look at all these claims and think them through with your head, not your heart, because your heart will betray you on things like this. If you want to see Buford as a hero, that's exactly how you're going to see him. If you look at the evidence, it tells you a different story. So, at any rate, we'll be back again next Saturday with another Saturday short. Now, I will tell you that keep in mind that this coming Thursday, we're going to do a special edition on Buford's fatal accident because it's been 2 years this month since Buford was killed in that wreck. And we want you to see some of those things. I want you to really get an idea about what happened. And we're going to have a gentleman, Steve Cromwell, who I met this past May at a meet and greet. And he was one of the individuals that just happened to be there that night. He was 17 years old at the time. And he's going to tell us all about what he saw, what he heard. And I think you're going to find that interesting. I've got a little footage that you would want to see uh, that comes back from those days. So be sure and join us on Thursday, 5 p.m. for that special edition. Until then, just remember the truth has no agenda.